to all of you who've joined the tutorial this morning, and apologies for joining late. Okay, so the tutorial today, I just want to cover two things, and I don't know how many people have started working on tutorial 8. I mean, on assignment 8. But if there are any questions or anybody wants to share any challenges that they've been having with it, then we'll do that. But I think the first thing to do is to look at what I said we'd do is to look at what the portfolio needs to include for the whole course. So what do you need to submit and how will you submit that? And there was a circular that was sent around by Fulu a few weeks ago, I think. And that gives some detail about what's required and also how it will be assessed. So I think you need to look at that. I'm just going to pull it up. Okay, so I think I can share my screen. Okay, sharing.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, so just to go through this, so this document does, it doesn't tell you exactly what to submit, but it does tell you what will be assessed. And so that will give you some indication. So how the portfolios will be assessed. So there are assignments, at the moment there have been 13 assignments that have been given out. Sorry, my connection now dropped. Okay, so let me just reshare. Lost it. Okay, so there have been 13 assignments, and what we've said is that you need to submit 10. And so there may be some that you don't do. Those assignments, you've submitted, drafted them, and you'll need to put them all together into a folder. And we will be looking at completeness of them. So how did you answer all the questions? Did you fill in all the templates? So how complete is it? And that will be out of 20, and then the level of detail. So sometimes when we looked at the drafts, we could see that there was very vague information that had been put into the assignment. So it wasn't really comprehensive, and that was quite a big thing. The level of detail included in the assignment, so how specific is the information? So that's 30 marks. And then the accuracy or appropriateness, so have you put in the right kind of information? So that's 30 marks. And then the use of the correct templates or presentation. So how have you presented it? So if there was a template, have you used that one? Or if it was not a template, what does the presentation look like? So is it arranged neatly, that kind of thing? That's only 10 points. And then initiative, innovation, or real problem solving shown in the assignment, that's another 10. So each assignment is out of 100. And so that gives a total marks of 1,000. And it'll be converted to a score of 80. So that's the assignments that you need to submit. And then if you've done more than 10 assignments, that's fine. The top 10 scores will be included in the overall score for the assignment. So we'll only take your top 10 scores. But there will be extra points allocated for effort. And this thing should be 4.2. The contributions, there's another 20. The other 20 points is for contributions to discussion forums, your notes, and if you did any extra assignments. So these, if you did presentations for the discussion forum, you can include your presentation in your portfolio. So it will be a file, a PowerPoint that you'll save. If you made any notes during the webinars, during the discussion forums, even if they're handwritten, doesn't matter. And if you did any extra reading or anything like that. So any sort of extra work associated with the course, you can just put those together. That doesn't have to be all beautifully put together. It can be scanned if it was handwritten from your notebook, or take a photo with your cell phone. So anything just to show that you thought about what you were learning. And then notes on actions taken based on the learnings on the manual implementation. So is there anything that you've done apart from the assignments to do with what you learned and implementing the manual? Those can also just be a brief notes on actions. And then also notes on how the assignments were done, especially when it was a team effort. So there's quite a lot of you working in teams, and it's not always in the assignment how you did that. So how did you work as a team? What did you do? Did you meet? Did you discuss? Did you go around, look at things together? How did you help each other? And if you did it on your own, you can also just explain some notes, make some notes on how you tackled the assignments. And if you did more than 10 assignments, then you'll get bonus points as well. But that's a total score out of 20, and that makes up the 100. So 80 for the assignments and 20 for the other efforts. So you'll have lots of bits and pieces, and you're going to have to put them together in a folder and transfer that folder. And it may need to be a zip folder. We'll just see how it works and maybe test sending some of them. But it should be emailable as a zip folder. Maybe it doesn't even need to be zipped. So that's the total of 100 points. But just to say that the course isn't accredited, but we still will try and get SACNAS points for completing the course. And then we will have certificates, and to be considered to have successfully completed the course, you need to get a minimum score of 50%, so 50 out of 100, out of that 100. So obviously if you've only done 8 assignments, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll fail the course, but then it does mean that you're going to be losing points for the assignment. You can't score out of 1,000, you're scoring out of 800. So I hope that gives you some background on the portfolios and what to submit and how we will assess them. I don't know if there are any questions. You can put up your hand. Nothing? All clear? Okay, all right, good. So, you're always welcome to send questions to me when you're working on putting it all together. Just to go through the timeline. So this is quite a little bit complicated. So we will be running tutorials. It's actually starting. It's not starting today. It's the 1st of December, not November. And then next week, there'll also be a series of tutorials. And then for you to submit, if you want to submit drafts of assignment 8 to 10, that's 8, 9, and 10, you can do that. It must be by the 10th of December. And then we'll give you input feedback on those so that you know if you need to do more work or fix anything. So it's a draft. It won't be for marks, but it is for feedback. So if you want that feedback, that's the deadline, the 10th of December. And then if you do submit for feedback, then you'll get feedback by the 15th of January on those 3 assignments. And then the other assignments, So that's 11, 12, 13, 14. If you want to get feedback on those, the deadline for drafts to be submitted is the 20th of January. So giving you the December holidays to work on those. And then you'll get feedback by the 31st of January for those last few assignments. And then you've got February to work on finalizing your portfolio and your 10 assignments and putting everything together. And it has to be submitted. Everything has to be submitted by the 28th of February next year. So that's the final deadline. So we can't accept after that just because the time frames are quite tight. And then we'll do the assessments in March and let you know by the end of March what the outcome is. And then in April, it'll probably have to be a virtual award, or we might link it to the collection assessment workshops that we're going to be running for that. We might see how we do that. Anyway, there'll be an award. There'll be an award of certificates for the people who completed successfully, and some prizes for the participants who've done the best, who get the highest scores, or just done something particularly special. All right, so that's the time frames. So they are quite tight, we realize, but the course has taken a long time, and I think people want to get it wrapped up and finished. Let's see. Okay, so Daniela says it's all clear about the portfolios. Okay, so that document was circulated by Fulu. It's available. You can always go back and refer to it if you're unsure about anything. Let me take that down. Okay, then the next thing to do is to look at assignment 8. So how many of you have actually attempted assignment 8? Made a start. Okay, so nobody has. Okay, Rendani has, Robin has. Daniela's finished. Okay, great. All right, so there are some people who've done it. Okay, and let's just hear how you found it. So Rendani, so what this was the collection care policy. So you had to check whether you have something like that, a collection care or curation policy. And then if you don't have a specific policy called the collection care policy, you have to see what other policies on collection management you have. And then kind of do a review of it. So check whether the points that were listed are in there. Let me just share this.
Morning, everyone. I am doing the option 2 because we don't have the policy at the moment. So I'm putting out the policy that we can use from now to onwards. So I was still trying to check those items that we had in the discussion forum and webinar. So it's not yet done yet. I'm still writing.
Okay, great. So that was the second option. If you don't have any done. Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. So you're still working on it. So,
yes, I'm still working on it.
Okay. Thanks, Rendani. So there was the option to review existing policies and check what was in them, or the second option, if you have nothing, and there will be instances, this is quite a new thing to have policies for everything. But if you have no policies that deal with collection care or curation, then you need to draft one for your institution or your unit. And then you can use the guideline points, and you have to make sure that at the beginning you say who the policy is applicable to, what the roles and responsibilities, who does what in that policy. and when is it up for review, and who authorizes or approves or signs off on it. And there's some additional questions for the first and the second option. Robin?
So we're doing it as a team effort. So Khotso is actually the one who's worked on this particularly, but he shared it for us for comments. So because there's 4 collections that are participating, that table that you have varies a bit for each one. So we're trying to work on that we have policies that are like certain points are for everyone, and some points won't be for all the collections. But we have got quite a few policies, but there's a few that definitely need work. So then we have on your comments, I think it's a comment column, the last column you have in the table, what does the policy say and what needs to be added? Every collection, all the 4 different collections are going to add their bits. And then I think the idea is eventually we'd have like one collection ethics policy for biosystematics as a whole, and possibly one specific with specific sections for the different types of collections, if it needs to be. If that makes sense.
So Robin, at the moment, the policies that you do have, are they for the whole collection, you know, cover all the collections, or are they for each different unit? Does each different unit have?
So each different unit has one, Michelle. Okay. So it's a bit silly because we all do similar things. So we want to try and make it that we have one policy that applies to everyone instead of having 4 different policies, which makes more sense in the long run, I think.
Yeah, it does. It certainly does. But it makes your job quite challenging to do this assignment.
Yeah, so I think we're hoping for the best, Michelle. I don't know if we're going to get it right because we still have to get them approved, but we're going to try.
Okay.
We're going to try.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, nothing's going to be, for the assignment, it doesn't have to be approved yet. It's just really, the purpose of this assignment is to get people to look at what they've got and to review it and look at where the gaps are and what needs to be done. So, that's what the assignment is. It's not to complete the policy, to revise all your policies. It's really just to look at what needs to be done. So it's quite a long list of things, 32. Those are points that would be that should be covered in a policy or multiple policies. And then to answer the following questions, so what policy statements need to be added to the policy to ensure that all the main points in the policy are covered? So what are of that long list of 32, which of those in a statement form would need to be added to your existing policies? And then are there any other changes that need to be made to improve the policy for collection care? So like Robin said, what would help would be to harmonize or to standardize the policies across their different collections so that there's one institutional policy that might have sections that are relevant to different collections. That's the kind of reflection that's needed. Okay, it's going to be quite a lot of work to go through. It's just filling in that table. I don't know if there's anyone from Sanby, Sonelisi, because I know Sanby has a lot of different policies for the herbaria. And so going through all of them and checking. I don't know, Sonelisi, where have you looked at Sanby's policies?
Yes, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Michelle. Yes, we did. This was, I think, back in July, if I'm not mistaken. And there were quite a number of policies, like policy D3s, like for security and protection. And I remember the very first point was collections must be protected from unnecessary damage, loss, or alteration. And so you use that. So basically, as the question requires, we are then to review that, like what is mentioned in the policy, what do we think is missing? And I have a question. I heard you ask like who's already started, who's already attempted, and I felt a bit odd there because I don't know if we are allowed to attend. Unfortunately, The rest of my team is either out on a field trip or in a Brahms meeting. I'm the only one here. I wanted to find out if it's okay, because we've done, I think, all the assignments except for the second last one. We've done the last one, but not the second last one. It will be done tomorrow, Friday. We are actually, I think, reviewing it tomorrow on Friday. Yeah. So I wanted to know if it's okay if we attend, but now to basically pretty much check that we've done stuff according to what you guys need us to have done, so that even before you guys provide feedback, we go and edit where we feel maybe we didn't do as well. It's fine. Thank you, Michelle. But yes, that's what we did. And it's one of the assignments that's like full, like each and every column or little block is full, because some of them we really didn't know what to put. But this one is complete, I think. Yeah, I hope. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, so I think that's the purpose of the tutorials. You know, if you've already done the assignment, then you may learn something from the tutorials that you might have missed, or you can just ask questions about something that you weren't sure of when you did the assignment and fix it. And if there's anything that you're unsure about, you can ask. If anyone wants to share their assignment, they're also very welcome to do that, to share their screen and to show the others what they've done and ask for input from other people. So yeah, so I think this first assignment is probably, the more policies you have, the more difficult it is, because you probably don't have one policy and you've got to go through 10, 15 policies and checking these 32 points to see whether they're covered somewhere. They might not all be in one document, but they might be scattered across your 15 policies. Okay, Daniela, you said you finished. Did you have a policy before?
Hi, Michelle. No, we didn't have I think a blessing and a curse. So I had to draft one for us, which is great, because at least now with the outlines and doing the course, we can do quite a comprehensive one without having a bad start from the beginning. I think the challenge for me mostly was just getting used to policy language, if that makes it more formal and a bit, you know, not to give straight instructions is, you know, took a little bit of practice, but I thought just going through the table of the review gave quite a good outline of how to develop the policy itself. So yeah, I thought it was fairly straightforward.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Daniela. So yeah, I mean, that is a point. Sometimes it's easier to start from scratch than to try and review lots of things and revise them and fix up things afterwards. So it is, in a way, it is a bit of a blessing. And then the other point that you make is also very important. So if you are drafting a policy, you've got to be very careful to not start going into procedures. So just always think that your policy statements are like rules, and then it's not the how to, it's what is the rule that you must follow. So if you look at the statements, the policy points in that table, they are stated like they're statements, they're not descriptions of things. So collections must be protected from unnecessary loss, damage, or alteration. So it doesn't say how you do it, it just says that's the rule. Collection management and care should meet the highest professional standards. So it doesn't talk about what those standards are or describe them. It's just a statement. And then collection management and care must be compatible with and enhance access. So they're high level statements and rules. And yes, you can go through that list because it is like a guideline. If you're starting from scratch and you don't have anything, go through that list of 32 points, and not all of them might be relevant to your situation. If you have no type material in your collection, so like for Ndani, they're not going to have type. It's a teaching collection. They're not going to have type material, so you won't put that in. They don't send, I don't know if they do, but maybe they don't send out material on loan for research purposes. So anything to do with that, you can take it out. You know, so you've got to think logically, and that's the kind of thing when we do the assessment, we look for, is it appropriate? So if Rendani puts something in her policy about type specimens, then that's not appropriate, you know, because it's not that kind of collection. You know, Daniela, like institutional staff, security guards, research staff, you know, maybe the research staff, but you'll think of your own situation and think about what's applicable in each of these points. Okay, so that's if you're drafting your new policy, and then remember to do your background, and then the additional questions for everyone to answer. So whether you're reviewing an existing policy or drafting a new one, getting the policy approved and implemented would be necessary for it to have any value. So what process would you follow to get the new or revised policy approved? So some institutions have quite complex procedures. Has to go through a whole chain of approvals. Others, it's just going to be maybe signed off by one person. But then the next question is also important to think about. So what steps would you suggest are taken to ensure that the policy is implemented? So you have a policy or you have a revised policy. How do you make sure that everybody who works in the collection knows about it and uses it and applies it? And again, it's going to be very different in different institutions. So in a big complex one like the ARC, where there's multiple collections that operate fairly independently, how do you make sure? So I don't know if anybody wants to share their answers to those questions. Robin, how would you make sure that you implement?
So the first one is, we've kind of got to answer for that one. It goes to Isabel as our research team manager, and then it goes to Dr. Van Vieren for approval on institute level. And then the implementation, each collection manager would have to be responsible for implementing the policy in their collection. But I also think one of the things that we would have to do is actually inform our researchers of what the policy is. Because one of the things I found is there's more policies than people realize we have, but it's not shared within the building, which is actually important, because as much as the researchers use the collection, they should also know about it. So the steps to implement it would be, I think the first step would be to actually inform people what the policy says. And then, for example, if it's something like access control, how do you implement it in your collection? Like when the NSCF manual came out, we have a policy, for example, the collection manager only takes out the samples, and then I sign, if it's for me, I sign a little document to say they're in my office so we can keep track of where they are. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers properly, Michelle.
Yeah. So, okay, so it's not as complicated as I thought it was for getting approval. But the implementation, so...
Sorry, Michelle, so there is still a question of if it has to go to central office for approval, but for now we're working on that it goes to institute level only. Because central office, yeah, they wouldn't know who would have to approve it. Doesn't make sense it goes that far.
And it's not a, so these are also, I don't know, maybe they do affect, so I know like at Sandy, policies like HR policies have to go through a long process of consultation and then approval on all the different structures, like all the way to the board or exco. But those policies like affect every single person in the institution, like finance policies and HR policies. But the collections policies, I think when I was working with the herbaria, it's not like that. They're specific to the herbaria. But I think we had to get them signed off by someone. I can't remember. Sanela Siwe, do you know?
Who has to sign off on these? No, but we just know that it goes from one person to the next. Like, for example, with us, it would obviously have to start with Yashika and then whoever Yashika reports to, and so forth and so forth. So even our answer is pretty much more along those lines, like in terms of getting it approved. So yeah, And also we figured that we'd have to maybe enter into discussions with the other herbaria, because we do now seek uniformity. So it wouldn't be a KZN herbarium thing only, it would be a Sanby herbarium, herbaria thing. So everybody, and then it goes to Manco and then Exco and then the Sanby board. Yeah. That's what we wrote as the answer for getting policies approved. But in terms of making sure that stuff is actually implemented, we are at various, I should be saying varying stages of implementation, because some of the stuff is pretty straightforward. Maybe it's just about procuring a particular book that you didn't have before. And so maybe you were noting stuff just in a different way. And so now you have to ensure that there's another way that you're doing it as well. Maybe all you did was hard copies. Now you have to make sure that it's electronic, or you were doing electronic. Now you also need hard copies, or your hard copies were in an exercise book and now you actually need to put it in some, you know, I don't know, formal but NSCF manual suggested kind of book, as opposed to your exercise 72-page college exercise book. What I wanted to also say with the implementation is that, again, some of the stuff, like I say, it's as simple as that, but other stuff for us has to be put on hold because it's massive. It would need things like the building that are on pause currently to actually be in place. Things like, you know, moving staff out of the collection, because at our place we work within the collection. So for us to actually be able to be out of the collection, we need another building. There's a lot of us and not enough space to accommodate us. And yeah, so when the new buildings are finally done, hopefully we can easily comply. With some of the stuff, it's just a matter of budget, like maybe it's too expensive, you know, to be able to do at the time. Yeah, so some of the stuff we've put on hold, but our approach, I don't know what other people are doing. Our approach to the assignments has been that, yes, everybody gets their own section that they do, but we have a collation meeting, so we go through everything together. Everybody understands what it is that is required. And even with implementation, so we have implementation meetings a month after that particular assignment. So whatever chapter refers to the previous assignment, the following month we will sit now and discuss that chapter's implementation. And so the assignment will have informed whatever needs to happen there. And so we now have like a checklist. And so we write stuff in red if we don't have it, or we you know, like anything to mark that this we don't have. So it's kind of like a checklist that, okay, we're good here, we are not so good here, or we don't have this at all. And so when now, like, I don't know whether to call it the next phase, when the next phase comes, then we now need to go through all of this and see how we can implement all of that. But I know, for example, with Babu Ngwenye's section, he's wanting to get things happening now. Like as soon as he got his stuff, you know, he was already working to make sure that that stuff happens. And yeah, I think we now have a pest management team or something. Yeah, but that's how we've been doing it. So there's some stuff that's easier to just get going already. Even if we hadn't done it, we don't need to wait up until it's next year. Other stuff requires budget. And so it's just a matter of, yeah. And other stuff needs policy changes like this here, like what we are discussing now. So we wouldn't just, implementing it means changing a policy, and that needs approval. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so that's quite difficult when you look down the list of these 32 points. And you think, so for example, you know, the collection storage areas must have appropriate fire detection and control systems that are tested and maintained regularly. And I know a lot of the institutions, the collections don't have appropriate fire suppression. They don't have, you know, not all the herbaria have gas fire suppression, or the entomology collections. It just, you know, it's not really feasible in the short term. And so what do you do with a policy statement like that? Do you put it in and work and just have it there as a policy statement, even though you can't in the foreseeable future achieve it, or do you leave it out? And like Sanele Siwe said, you know, so like with the buildings, the issue at the moment is that there isn't an alternative to having staff sitting in the collection storerooms. So what do? Do you leave that policy statement out, or do you put it in and continuously try to get it implemented? And I think that that's what needs to happen. So if you leave these things out, they're off the table and no one pays them any attention when budget's allocated or infrastructure is being decided what's going to get funding. If your thing isn't on the table as a policy, something that you're not meeting in terms of your policy, then you have no chance of ever getting it. So I think, you know, if it's not appropriate at all, then it's fine, you leave it out. But if it's something that you don't have, still put it in, because you should be working towards it. And especially at like senior management level, if they can see that there's a policy statement and there's an issue with it not being implemented, then there's more pressure to work towards getting it done. But it's quite tricky, because there's pressure to implement a policy and not just say, oh, we've got this as a policy statement, but we can't do it and we will never do it. So there's a fine sort of balance. So I saw that Darmaine had said she's skipping 8, assignment 8. And there's another chat. So Robin said just looking at what they have has been a big eye-opener for everybody. So I think that's also so true. You know, at Sanby, over the whole institution, we've got about 160 different policies, from finance to HR to health and safety to, I don't know, so many different policies. You know, there's a policy for everything, mostly HR policies. But to try and remember what's in them and implement it is so difficult, so difficult. And so people just sort of do the, you know, I mean, some of them we have to, like HR policies. But if you've got a whole lot of policies and they're complicated and they're big fat documents, people tend to just park them and not work with them because it's just too much. And it's not, you know, I mean, that's normal human behavior. And so that's why I put that question in, is how do you change that situation? So what would you need to do to make sure that people know what's in the policy and they work with it, they work towards it, or they try and meet that statement. Otherwise, the big risk is that you have a policy, no one knows what's in it, no one ever looks at it or refers to it, it's just a forgotten dead document. And I think that the point that Sanele Siwe raised about meetings, and I know people don't like meetings, but this, you could have like a lunchtime, bring your lunch, let's just go through this section of the policy for everybody and see that people understand and see what they mean and see what we need to change or to do differently. How do we break it down? So it's also, if you just send it to people by email, here's our new policy, they probably won't look at it. So those questions, that's for if you answer section 1 or 2, those questions must be, you know, either first or the second option, and you still have to answer those 2 questions. And then there's also the 2 questions that are only for the first option. Okay, so it sounds like this is not a very difficult, challenging, exposing people and allowing them to talk about it, that will help with getting it implemented. Assignment, but useful for implementing the manual and getting people to think about what they have and what they could have and what they should have. So last chance for questions from anybody? Comments? Okay, Sanele Siwe, from you.
Is the offer still up to share?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to share something quickly.
And you,
Okay, so I wanted to just show this part here, for example. So it's just that I saw, I think it was, can you see anything on the screen?
I can see your screen, but can you just make it bigger?
I'm expecting, oh, there, it's up there. Oh yeah, because I'm sharing this to you from Google Drive.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I wanted to, I think it was Jermaine who said she's leaving this part. I just wanted to show that Jermaine, it's really not that bad unless you have a lot of policies to read through, which we did. So for example, this was I think the policy statement, if I should, is that what I call it, policy statement? But what I wanted to show is that, so that's what it says. This is where we found it. And then what do our policies say about that? But this is what I wanted to highlight. I just went to this part. So, sorry, this here, that however, the policy does not state anything about the collection area and officers being separate. It also does not state anything about data loggers to record and monitor temperature and relative humidity on an ongoing process. And this is something that will need to be added to the policy. So what I wanted to show with this is that regarding the assignment and what's in the manual, there will be certain requirements that are needed for you to meet. There are certain requirements that you need to meet to be fully compliant. And so if the policies that we have are missing something, we would highlight this in the assignment so that for the person who's now responsible for implementing that chapter, they already have those big gaps, you know, like highlighted for them, if I can put it like that, so that when the implementation document is being drawn up, the stuff that goes in red or is highlighted as gaps is already very obvious. Of course, that person now, with our help, has to go in a little bit more detail, but already you can kind of see where the gaps are. And so we would know, for example, that so when drawing up now the policy, since whether we're wanting to draw a policy or edit it, we know that we need to include stuff about that. Yeah, that's all I wanted to highlight. Yeah.
Okay, that looks great. Really good. It's a lot of work that's being done. Okay, anybody else want to share theirs? No? All right. Okay, so then I think we can close for this tutorial, and there will be a whole lot more. The schedule has been circulated. Hopefully next time I'll remember about it. Yeah, we'll get into it. So next week is a busy week with tutorial, but we'll try and keep them to an hour. I think we scheduled 2 hours, but or an hour and a half. Unless they're particularly complicated ones, but we should be able to keep it to an hour and a half. Right, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at